Hi everybody, let's start the week 3 of Modeling with Statistics class. This week we're going to talk about very basic statistics stuff, which are average and median. Also we'll learn how to summarize the data set. Today we are in the week 3. Here's today's goal. We will learn how to describe or summarize the characteristics of data or data set. If you say data set, that implies a set of a large number of data, not necessarily large. If you have not only a single data, but you have a couple of data or large number of data, that you can call it data set. Okay, let's assume we have some data sets in hand. And how you describe the data set, about the data set. And we are thinking about the characteristics of data, and then we will learn how to show the result or the data set itself. We will learn 4 basic approaches to summarize the data set. The first one is ratio. I'm sure you are already familiar with ratio. It's just the ratio. You divide a number by a number for a certain objective. The other one is distribution or variance. We will learn about distribution next week. And the third one, and the value of the data. The value of data, that's what do you mean by the value? Value is the number itself. Is it small or large? That's value. And finally, the trend. Trend is mainly the time trend or the shifting trend in the time scale. So if you have, let's say, every week monthly data, you can see the trend from January to December as a sales result history. That's the trend. Among the 4 approaches, I'm sure you already knew about the ratio and the trend, so we will touch upon briefly the ratio and the trend in the coming weeks, but this week we're going to focus on the value of data. And here's a dice. If you roll a dice a couple of times, you get the result as a data set. The first question is, once you get the data set, how are you going to show or summarize or describe the summary of the data set? That's the first question. How are you going to do that? This is an example of the 4 approaches I mentioned in the previous slide, but using this dice example. The first one, the left upper side, that's magnitude, the value. That's the value of the dice I, or you can say it's a number of the dice. The most famous, most familiar the ratio, not ratio, the index of the value would be the average. So let's use the average to show of the 4 types of the dice result. If you throw a couple of times of each dice, for example, you get the average 4.2 or something for dice 1, and 2.5 for dice 2, and 3.5 dice 3, and 4.4 to 5 for dice 4. With this result, you can say this average number of the result, the dice 4's result, average result, was the highest. Yes, that's true. And the lowest is dice 2. This is how you describe the result by using average for each dice. The average is the easiest and the most convenient way to show or summarize the result in terms of the number itself or value itself. Let's move on to the bottom one, the ratio. This is one of the way to summarize the result. If you throw a dice a couple of times, and here is the ratio of each eye, 1 through 6. This is just an example. So you get 90% of the times show the eye 1 and the 16% for eye 2. These are ratios. In most cases, this pie chart is used to illustrate the result in terms of the ratio. We will touch upon how we illustrate the result in the coming weeks. So let's move on to the trend. Let's say you roll the dice, 3 dices, in consecutive way from May 1st to May 4th. These trend, okay, this is the average. So you took average on each day and show with this trend chart, bar chart, the trend chart for each of the 3 dice. And here is the trend. If you look at the dice 1, on the first day, on May 1st, the average was almost 4.3 and went down to 2.6 or something and went up. That shows the trends. And the last one is distribution or variance. This chart shows, it is called a histogram, but this chart shows which eye shows how many times. I give you one example. If you look at the 1, I've got 36 times the eye 1. And I've got 34 times for eye 2. This chart showed the distribution from 1 through 6. You can see how many times you get which eye with this dice. So these 4 approaches, you have to find the best approach or approaches to fit or meet your goal. So which one to use depends really on your objective or your final message. But today's message is you should know there are 4 basic approaches to summarize or to describe the result of the data set. So I want you to smartly choose which one can be best to be used for your objective. But this week, I'd like to focus on the first one, the magnitude of the value. Okay, let's talk about 2 basic ways to show the magnitude of the value or the value itself. Here we talk about the average and the median. I'm sure you already knew about the average. Average is average. And the other one is median. I'm afraid some of you are not familiar with median, but here is a definition of median from Wikipedia. If you list all the data in a data set you have in order from smallest to the largest, if you pick up the middle one, that's the median. So conceptually, average and the median is not the same, and the calculation weight is not the same. Median is a number in the middle of the list. But the next question is, how do you need to use? And which do you need to choose In what situation? You have to distinguish these two approaches to index based on your objective and the situation. Okay, let's think about some example. This is an exercise you already did before my lecture this week. The question was, by which group 1, 2, 3, is the service best accepted? Let's assume you are providing some service and you took customer satisfaction score survey, and here's the result. You have 49 answers from each group 1 to 3. And you have to summarize, you have to understand the characteristics of each group. How are you going to see the characteristics of each group based on these results? And how are you going to get the conclusion with this result? That was a question. In this case, many students, many people take an average of each group. That is the easiest one. But you already learned the median, the number in the middle. How these numbers show differently? Let's look at the result. Before I talk about the result, I want you to look at the one in yellow. That's Excel function which you can use for your future calculation. The first one is for average. Just type in the equal average, then you select the range of the data for the calculation. The other one is median, the same. Just type in the equal, median, and bracket for choose the range of the data. Let's go back to the result of the calculation. Here is a summary of each index, average and median. What can you say from this? Or in other words, which one is the best performance in terms of the customer satisfaction? How are you going to report to your boss about these groups' reaction or evaluation? If you look at average, that's a slight difference between 1 and 2, but the highest score was from group 1, 5.55. Can you say this service was best accepted by group 1 because the group 1 has the highest average? If only look at average score, that's true. That's not wrong. But that means you are only relying on the one index, which is average. That's sometimes very risky. How about median? If you look at median, that's the number in the middle. If you take the highest median, that's group 2. What can you say? The next question comes like this. Which one is better accepted, group 1 or group 2? It's very confusing. Either average or median, that's take just one aspect of the data set. So the key message of today, if you look at the value of the data set, there are many ways to summarize or describe that value, large or small. In this case, okay, let me rephrase. Which group has the largest score? If you take an average, that's group 1. If you take median, that's group 2. It really depends on how you look at these data. That's my key message. There are a bunch of ways to describe or summarize the data. But this week I want you to understand even that just two different index, average, median, you may get different results. So you have to take care, especially when you rely on just one index, in this case average or median. Why this happens? Let's look at the next slide. Okay, let's look at the distribution of the result of each group with the histogram. When you look at the group 1, by the way, the red bar shows the average and the yellow bar shows the median. For the group 1, as you can see, these shapes like this. And group 2 is something like this. And group 3 is something like this. Okay, if you talk about group 1, yes, the majority of the response is around 5 or 6. It's close to average or a median. But if you look at group 2, what can you say about the result? What was the perception of the people of this service? As you can see about group 2, you can see some people, almost half of the people put lower score, like 1, 2, or 3. On the other hand, the other people put higher result score, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So they are totally split. And then if you look at the average, that's around 5.5. Can you say the average score, which is 5.5, represent this group 2? The answer is no. So if you rely on the average score, which is 5.5, that does not mean most of the people put the score around 5.5. In such case, what does it mean by the average? So you cannot say anything about the average number, or either median in this case. So how about the group 3? This is another distribution. But in this case, the average is 3.5 or something. But if you look at the median, which is the middle number, that's 2. That means half of the people of the group 3 put 1 or 2. That's the lowest score. And the rest of the half puts 3, 4, 5, 6 or something. So I have no right answer. What can you say about the results of group 1, 2, and 3? I'm sure you cannot explain only with the average numbers. That's why I am showing the 4 approaches to show the data characteristics. If you want to know the characteristics of the data set, or if you want to compare the 2 or 3 data sets, sometimes it is very risky to rely on one single index. For example, average. I know average is the most convenient and the easiest way to summarize the whole groups and characteristics. But as you can see, in this example, in some cases, this is very risky, and then you may misunderstand the message from the data. So to wrap up today, we just focus on the value, magnitude of the value, that's large or small. In such case, yes, we will rely on some index something like average or median, but please make sure this is not only way to summarize the dataset. And like we saw in this case, distribution, what is the shape of the original data, how they are distributed, is another way to look at the dataset of characteristics. So, the final message of today, distribution matters. Please think about distribution. If you think distribution matters in your dataset, please try to look at how they shape, what is the shape of the dataset, how they are distributed by using histogram. And I will show you another way to see the extent of distribution, and we will learn another index called standard deviation next week. Lastly, let me talk about the summary of today. We learned 4 approaches to describe the dataset. And point 2, and then this week we focused on the average and the median to summarize the value of a dataset, large or small. And then the last one, average and median may not show the entire picture of the dataset. So distribution also matters. And we are going to talk about the distribution further next week. So please do not misunderstand. I do not say you should not or you cannot use average or the median. They are still very useful tool to describe or summarize the data. But still, that is not enough. That's a key message. And also we have another approaches to complement that risk. One of them is a distribution. Here's the assignment for the next week. I want you to find an example or examples in your daily life or social issues where distribution may work to show some insights behind the data. You do not have to collect any actual numbers, or you do not have to calculate anything. I want you to bring some examples where you can use distribution, and distribution may work. Or if you do not see the distribution, that may cause some problem. I want to see some examples. I want you to share the example in your life, or in any social news, whatever. Okay, that's all for today, and I will see you next week. Thank you.